The South African Parliament voted earlier this year to change the country's constitution to allow for the confiscation of white-owned land without compensation. The land would then be redistributed among black farmers. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa recently announced that his ruling ANC would try to push through that amendment. And earlier this week, there were reports that the land seizing from white farmers had begun. 2 farms in the northern province of Limpopo were targeted. Farmers were offered less than 10% of the land's market value, and talks with the owners to buy the properties collapsed. Now, the plan is not only sparking controversy among South Africans. Shortly after Fox News aired a segment on the issue, President Trump weighed in. He tweeted, "I've asked Secretary of State Pompeo to closely study the South Africa land and farm seizures and expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers." Well, in response, Julius Malema, the South African politician who initially proposed the land reform plan, lashed out at President Trump, demanding that he stay out of South Africa's domestic affairs.
We remain unshaken. Actually, we are more determined after the Donald Trump tweet to expropriate our land without compensation. There is no white genocide here. It's an absolute rubbish to say there is white genocide. There is black genocide in the USA. They are killing black people.
Put the land reform controversy into context. In South Africa, John Purchase is the CEO of AgBiz, that's the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, and in Washington, Alexander Hammond, a policy researcher and contributor to Young Voices. His work focuses on international development in Africa. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. John, I'd like to start with you. Last week, nice to have you, gentlemen. Last week, the ANC chairman, Gweda Mantashe, said that white farmers shouldn't own more than 25,000 acres of land, and if they do own more, that it should be taken without compensation. Now, AfriForum, a civil rights group, released what it claimed to be a list of about 190 farms that the government is targeting for seizure. John, you have spoken to the ANC leadership about this. Where do things stand right now?
Yes, we had meetings this week, both with President Ramaphosa as well as with Deputy President David Mabuza. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in South Africa around the land reform issue, also specifically around the expropriation without compensation question, where there's a resolution to see if government must amend the constitution or not. Part of the problem is that the current constitution has not been tested properly in terms of expropriation, which makes provision for expropriation, but with just and equitable compensation. Now, the new motion is to bring in expropriation without compensation, and the ANC have said that they want to clarify the constitution in terms of under what conditions you can expropriate without compensation. Now, the list that you refer to is the list that they want to use to test the current constitution in terms of the provisions for expropriation. So in principle, we're not against testing the Constitution. We're strongly in favor of not changing the Constitution because we believe the current Constitution provides all the tools government needs to effect land reform.
Alexander, I'd like to bring you into this conversation. In neighboring Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe instituted a policy of confiscating land from white farmers and redistributing it to the black people there. That led to the economic collapse of what was formerly known as the breadbasket of Africa. The president has promised land expropriation will not threaten economic stability or agricultural output. What do you say to that?
I'd say that's absurd. The idea that you can take land from productive white farmers and give it to people who are unskilled in the industry and expect food production to stay the same or increase is ridiculous. As we see in Zimbabwe, when they allowed for expropriation without compensation, what happens in the 10 years that followed, food production fell by 60%. The economy was in ruin, hyperinflation went through a roof. In 2008 of July, daily inflation was 98% in its peak, meaning that prices doubled almost every day. The idea that South Africa can avoid these consequences is ridiculous.
The motion to change the constitution to allow for the land confiscation from white farmers was brought by Julius Malema. He's the leader of the economic freedom fighters. Now, Malema has been accused of advocating violence, stirring racial tensions. He's called on supporters to shoot the Boer, which is a term for white South African, and he recently had this to say.
I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
John, this has many white South Africans concerned. Are you worried?
Yes, there's a level of concern in South Africa. There's a level of concern around farm safety in South Africa, whether it's white farmers, whether it's black farm laborers. Crime levels are rising, and we are concerned generally about safety. I don't think the EFF is such a significant party. The president clearly yesterday said in Parliament, and he directed it to the EFF, that the government and the ANC do not want to nationalize land. They want to extend property rights to people that previously did not have the ability or the privilege of owning land. And we agree with that. We need to broaden or extend property rights to more people, especially people that were excluded from owning land through the 1913 Land Act, etc. So we're strongly in favor of strong property rights in South Africa, not nationalisation. That is the policy of the EFF.
We cannot pretend the ANC can be trusted. Recently, 3 weeks ago, the ANC tweeted that they implied that all white people were murderers. The ANC is led by Cyril Ramaphosa, who in the 90s once compared boiling frogs with how to deal with white people in South Africa. That you must slowly turn up the temperature so they don't realise what's happening. So by the time they realise what's happening, it's too late and we're all dead. The idea that it's just the economic freedom fighters who's the extreme party here is ridiculous. The ANC cannot be trusted. And on the same day that the ANC promised to uphold property rights on Monday is the exact same day that two farms in the northern region of Limpopo, Akaland Boadry is the name of a farm, was given the eviction notice.
Well, Alexander,
there's no compensation there.
Alexander, I hear your point certainly on the Limpopo farms, but the ANC did say that that tweet that the white people were murderers was not officially from the account, even though it did come from the account. They have subsequently deleted it and have claimed that it did not represent the ANC. But big picture, when we have these kind of conversations, Alexander, how do you think this impacts investor confidence and foreign investment in South Africa?
There's been reports recently of land auctions happening and no one's turning up to them because they know that their property rights are not secure. It's exactly the same that happened in Zimbabwe as all foreign direct investment fled. The moment that there's no property rights is the moment that other businesses leave the country.
John, very quickly, are you worried that you would not get fair market value for your properties?
I think we must wait for the Constitutional Review Committee, which is a committee of Parliament, to do its work and to make recommendations. Then we can debate this whole thing properly in South Africa. Certainly, we've got concern and uncertainty at the moment, but we are dealing with that the best we can in engaging with government.
All right. Thank you so much, John Purchase, CEO of Agribiz, the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. Thanks for staying up late for us. And also to policy researcher Alexander Hammond. Appreciate it. Thank you.